strength of movements that are developing their struggles with no Western reference, or very little Western reference. They have other languages, they have other repertoires of liberation, they have other concepts, and therefore the problem is whether we can develop a kind of aggregation or coalitions. How do we develop coalitions out of so many different conceptions and ideas? And it is possible. It is possible, and it is necessary. And there are the strategies that these movements, for instance, for human rights, if you take the people that from other cultures want to get involved in human rights struggles, they usually do make some recommendations and some demands on the hegemonic conception of human rights. Look at the great human rights scholar, and Boaventura is from Kenya. Boaventura. We can also refer to a great Islamic scholar here in the UK now, Tariq Ramadan. What he says is that, look at how Macau poses the question, that the critiques of human rights coming from Africa, Asian Muslims and Hindus and so on, they have a way of redeeming human rights through multiculturalization. I call it interculturalization of the corpus of human rights could be attempted in a number of ways. So you could really try to make these corpus of human rights more adequate for an intercultural struggle by doing the following: balancing between individual and group rights, giving more substance to social and economic rights. That's why the Marxist tradition here is very useful. Relating rights to duties, addressing the relationship between the corpus and the economic system. There is something that is always absent, is the relation of human rights with the political economy. And that's why I mentioned the question of capitalism and socialism. So, in conclusion, in order to develop this, this has been very crucial, the idea that we have to bring together movements that come from different cultures. Because in fact, capitalism, as it becomes global, fragments more and more the struggle against capitalism. So what we have today is more than ever fragmentation of the resistance against capitalism. My struggle is not your struggle. And therefore I'm not going to coalesce with you in a struggle because it's not my struggle. You are a peasant, I'm a woman. You are an heterosexual, I'm a gay. I'm an ecologist, so you are a worker. These have been the ways in which resistance against capitalism, colonialism and patriarchy have been divided. And that's the problem of social movements. They are one issue problem. They divide. They don't have a culture of unity. Why don't they have that culture? Because for us in our tradition, unity is homogeneity. Even in Marx, the unit of working class was growing because it would be more and more homogeneous. Very early on, B.S.Santos told Marx, well, not Marx, it was that then, you know, B.S.Santos said, well, it's not becoming more homogeneous, it's becoming more heterogeneous. So this idea that there is no unity without homogeneity, that's our mind. Can we develop unity out of heterogeneity? Yeah, that's what I'm trying to claim here, because that's the only possibility, because to build homogeneity is on the basis of one of the partial cultures present. That is to say, it involves absorption, it involves cannibalization. That's the specialty of the Western tradition in its hegemonic thing. And yesterday, someone was really questioning me, and after the class, in a very serious, probably I didn't have time now to address that, but he was asking me whether inclusion sometimes is not a form of exclusion. Of course. Well, the Western tradition is very inclusive. It absorbs almost everything. But while absorbing, it pasteurizes it, integrates, destroys. I could give you many stories of this destruction of the diversity, of the perversion of an original idea. I don't resist this one. When I was, and this is in the first volume of Democratizing Democracy, I was doing the project on participatory democracy in Porto Alegre. Of course, for us, it was a form of radical democracy, of very participatory democracy. And one day, the governor, the mayor of the city, a dear friend of mine, Sousa, was called upon by the World Bank in Washington to come to Washington to explain to them what is participatory budgeting. And of course, all of them, we are terrorized by fact. And when we received the call, we said, well, what is this? We are trying to develop something with a kind of an anti-capitalist orientation. Participatory, a different allocation of investments. The lower people, the lower classes here in Porto Alegre are having a say, and so on. Corruption is over. And these guys of the World Bank are interested in this. What do they want? They said, well, go there and talk to them. Why not? Explain what we do. And he came back and said, well, they were very interested, and I told them that, you know, there are, in our understanding, that this participatory budgeting, and I think I have that story in the paper, that the participatory budgeting for us is very important because of two ideas. On one side, there is a kind of a technocratic element in it. That is to say, it allows for a better distribution of the investments, municipal investments, without corruption. On the other side is a very empowering democratic instrument. Because while in representative democracy, the citizens don't decide, elect the decision makers, there they are the ones that are the decision makers in the participatory budgeting. It's very complex, the idea, as it works there. Well, look at the World Bank since 2002. The World Bank is promoting participatory democracy all over the world. Look at those reports. What do they get out of the participatory budgeting of Porto Alegre? The technocratic element. They say it's very important because it fights corruption. It's very important, it fights corruption. What is the democratic empowering element there? It's not. So they really adopted selectively the idea of participatory budgeting and transformed it into a kind of another instrumental, in my view, of domination, of conditionality. Participatory democracy became a conditionality for the World Bank. So this inclusion means exclusion. So we have to pay attention to that. So, and for that you have to have a political criterion very, very, very alert. So I think that the ideas that came out of this understanding are the following. And with this I would conclude, and we may have some time for questions. The first one is that, contrary to what we may expect, we are not moving from incompleteness to completeness. We are doing just the opposite. We are moving from the idea that cultures are complete to the idea that they are incomplete. Because once you enter intercultural translation, you can see how different cultures are very incomplete. So you raise the consciousness of incompleteness. The idea is to raise the consciousness of incompleteness. The second one is that there are narrow and there are wide versions of culture. And we have to distinguish and know what to distinguish. The third one, that's probably very critical indeed, is from unilateral to shared time. This is one of the most complex traps that we have now in this field. Is that, for reasons that we have been discussing, now these questions that probably 10 years ago it would be impossible to discuss them, they have become very possible to be discussed. Sometimes they cause some strange, some idea of strangeness, but in any instance we can discuss them because we see the loss of epistemological and political confidence in the ways in which the Western tradition has been dealing with the world and with the Western countries. But then you can assume, and that's a trap, that's why you have to be very vigilant once you are doing this work, that you can assume we can be tempted to assume that since intercultural translation is a good thing now, it's good for everyone. It's good for me, therefore it's good for you. This is an illusion. So the first point here is that we have to find a way, and this requires lots of conversation, lots of debate, to see whether the different movements coming from different cultures, if they really think that intercultural translation may be a progressive thing now. In another more recent project I was doing in Latin America, in Ecuador, one of the leaders came to me and said, look, this idea of interculturalism has really a trap for me. He's a very wonderful leader, a man, very knowledgeable person, very old guy. And because I think interculturality is doing what the Spanish did. The Spanish tried to destroy us. Interculturalism may destroy us. Because we are going to enter intercultural dialogues, but we are weaker. And therefore, we may be, again, absorbed and destroyed our autonomy, our specificity, and a very benevolent idea of intercultural translation. So nothing is simple. And the discussion that followed, which in fact is taped, was a very interesting discussion in which I was trying to defend, yes, look, I'll tell you what Lorenzo, how I see it. I think you are right in principle. You are right in principle. But let's see under which conditions, in fact, that may not happen. What are the conditions for the indigenous movement now in Ecuador, after so many defeats, after a decade of wonderful victories in the 90s, now defeat after defeat? What they should do? What could we do together so that this understanding develops without weakening the position of the indigenous people? On the contrary, strengthens it. Why did I say? Well, when was my argument that became very important for Lorenzo in the debate? He said, Lorenzo, what I'm witnessing now here in Ecuador is that you have a constitution with many indigenous premises establishing the constitution. But what I see is the indigenous people are more and more in the ghetto. They are more and more isolated. There is more anti-indigenous feeling now than before. Like that. Well, you can see that in America today there is a racist, anti-black racism developing because of Obama. So you can see that any victory that usually brings that together. So this backlash. And you can see that. So if you are going to isolate the indigenous movement from the rest of the movement, the women don't go along with you. The working class is not, the workers' movement is not going along with you. So you feel isolated. And you are not the majority. In Bolivia they are the majority. But here you are not the majority. So we need this. And after discussion we decided that probably it would be nice to go ahead. And we have been doing these workshops, which are the popular University of Social Movements workshops, in which we do this. So I conclude here. This is just an exercise. I'm doing other exercises of intercultural translation, of which I don't have time to report to you. But what I think that probably is coming out is the idea, one idea that I didn't mention in all the classes, no fact, even though it is in the text, is that I mentioned a lot about the sociology of essence, how to make visible realities that are on the other side of the line, how to make them credible, how to develop theories that may be enabling to them without excluding whatever is on the other side of the line. But I didn't mention at all the other key concept that you find in the text, which is the concept of sociology of emergence. Because sociology of absences is just one aspect of the theory. The other one is the sociology of emergence. That is to say, I'm not trying just to develop the presence